Disaster hovers over Frya's lands, carrying yoke and chains. So all tribes that have sprung from Frya's blood must cast aside their nicknames and only call themselves Frya's children or folk. You must all rise and expel Finda's folk from Frya's domain. If you do not, you shall find slave chains placed around your necks. The foreign masters will abuse your children and have them lashed until their blood seeps into your graves. The spirits of your ancestors will come to wake you and blame you for your cowardice and carelessness. But finally she opened her lips and spoke. My eyes are blurred, but the inner light of my soul emerges. Yes, I can see. Hear, earth, and rejoice with me. When Aldlin drowned, the first spoke of the Yule wheel stood at the top. Then it went down, and so did our freedom. When 2 more spokes, or 2,000 years, have passed, however, the sons who were born out of the fornication between princes and priests and the folk will stand up and speak out against their fathers. These sons will all be murdered, but what they shall have said will be remembered and bear fruit in the hearts of resolute people, like good seeds that were laid in your soil. Another 1,000 years the spoke shall descend and evermore sink into darkness and blood, shed over you when princes and priests deceive. But then the red of dawn will start glowing again. Seeing that, the false princes and priests will join forces to keep freedom down. But freedom, love, and unity will strengthen the folk and rise out of the gutter with the wheel of time. The light that started as a glimmer will eventually turn into a flame. Blood of the villains will flow over you, O earth, but you must not absorb it. Toxic creatures will drink it and perish. All vile histories that were made up to propagate the princes and priests will be offered to the flames. Finally, your children shall all live in peace. For our beloved ancestors' sake, and for the sake of our precious freedom, 1,000 times I beg you, dearest, to never let the eyes of a monk go over these writings. They speak sweet words, but unnoticed they meddle with all that concerns us Fryas. They collaborate with foreign kings who pay them well. They know that we are their greatest enemies because we dare speak about freedom, justice, and royal obligations. Therefore they want to obliterate all traces of our ancestral heritage and what is left of our morals. My dear ones, I have visited their palace. If Ralda allows it, and if we do not strengthen ourselves, they will exterminate us all. When Ralda, the Allfather, gave children to the mothers of mankind, he laid one language in all tongues and on all lips. This gift Ralda bestowed upon men to be used for letting each other know what must be avoided and what must be pursued to find happiness and hold it for eternity. Ralda is wise, good, and all-foreseeing. As he knew that luck and happiness must flee from earth when malice can deceive virtue, he attached an equitable property to this language. This property consists of the impossibility to tell lies or speak deceptive words without stammering or blushing, by which means the evil-hearted can instantly be identified. Because our language thus leads to luck and happiness, and helps beware of evil inclinations, its name, God's language, is fully justified, and all those who hold it in honor benefit from it. However, what happened? As soon as deceivers arose among our half-sisters and half-brothers, who presented themselves as God's servants, things instantly changed. The deceptive priests and the bitter, cruel princes, who always conspired together, wanted to live as they pleased and bypass God's laws. In their wickedness, they have invented different languages, so as to be able to speak secretly in the presence of others about all evil things and about all unworthy things, without a stammer betraying them or a blush tainting their faces. So what was born from that? Just as the seed of good herbs germinates under the ground when it was openly sown by good men in the bright of day, so time brings to light the harmful herbs that were sown by evil men in secret and in darkness. The dissolute girls and unmanly boys who prostituted themselves to the vile priests and princes elicited the new languages from their bed partners. That is how they spread among the peoples, until they altogether forgot God's language. Would you like to know what became of this? Now that stammering or the face no longer give away their evil thoughts, virtue has vanished from their midst. Wisdom followed, and freedom also left. Unity got lost, and discord took its place. Love has fled, and promiscuity shares a table with envy. And where once justice ruled, rules now the sword. All have become slaves, the populace of their masters, and the masters of envy, addictions, and greed. When Helena, or Helena, whose own name was Minerva, was well established, and the Greeks loved her almost as much as her own folk, some princes and priests came to the burg and asked her where her inherited states, or Urva, were. Helena answered, "I carry Min, that is, my Urva, in my heart. What I inherited is love of wisdom, justice, and freedom. If I lost that, I would be like the lowest of your slaves. Now I give advice for free, but then I would sell it." The dignitaries left and shouted mockingly, "We are your obedient servants, wise Helena." But they failed in their ridicule, for the folk that loved and followed her took this name as a name of honor. When the dignitaries realized they had missed their target, they started accusing her and said she had bewitched the folk. But our folk, and the good Greeks, asserted everywhere that it was slander. Once they came and asked, "So if you are not a sorceress, then what is the purpose of the eggs you always have with you?" Minerva answered, "These eggs are the symbol of Frya's counsels, in which our future, and that of all humankind, lies concealed. Time must hatch them, and we must protect them from being damaged." The priests replied, "Well said, but what is that hound at your right-hand side for?" Helena answered, "Does not the shepherd have a sheepdog to keep his herd together? Just like the dog serves the shepherd, I am in Frya's service. I must watch over her flock." "That makes sense indeed," said the priest. "But tell us, what is the meaning of the night owl that is always sitting on your head? Might that light-shunning animal be the sign of your clairvoyance?" "No," Helena answered. "He helps me remember that a certain kind of people is wandering the earth, also living in temples and holes, gnawing in the dark, but not like him helping to rid us of mice and other plagues, but rather to invent tricks to rob other people of their knowledge, so they can more easily seize and enslave them and suck their blood like leeches." Once, when the plague had come to the land, they came with a crowd of people and said, "We are all making offerings to the gods, so that they might ward off the plague. Will you not help calm their wrath? Or did you bring the plague over the land with your arts?" "No," Minerva said. "Since I do not know any gods that do evil, I cannot ask them to be nicer. I know only one God, that is Ralda's spirit. And because God means good, he also does no evil." "Where does evil come from, then?" the priests asked. "All evil comes from yourselves and from the stupidity of the people that walk into your trap. So if your supreme being is all that good, then why does he not avert evil?" the priests asked. Helena answered, "Frya has put us on the path, and the carrier, that is time, must do the rest. For all disasters, counsel and help can be found, but Ralda wants us to search ourselves, so we shall become strong and wise. If we refuse, he lets us squeeze out our own tumors, so we shall experience the results of wise and foolish deeds." A prince replied, "I would imagine it better to simply ward off disaster." "Of course," Helena answered, "because then people would remain like tame sheep. You and the priests want to protect, but also to shear and slaughter them. But that is not what our Supreme Being wants. He wants us to help each other, but also that all be free and become wise. Because we want that too, our folk elects our leaders, reeves, counselors, and all chieftains and masters from the wisest of the good people. So all will do their best to become wise and good. This way, we will know and teach the folks at the same time that only being wise and acting wisely leads to glory." "That is quite a statement," the priest said. "But if you imply that the plague is a result of our ignorance, then would Helena be so good as to live up to her proud name and enlighten us? Yes, Helena said. Crows and other birds only feed on foul carrion, whereas the plague not only likes foul carrion, but also foul ethics, customs, and addictions. If you want the plague to leave for good, you must overcome the addictions, and all must become pure, inside and out. We want to believe your counsel is good, said the priests, but tell us, how are we supposed to improve all the people under our rule? Then Helena rose from her seat and said, The sparrows follow the sower, the folks their good leaders. Therefore you must begin by purifying yourselves, so that you may look within and without turning red from shame before your own conscience. Now, instead of purifying the people, you have invented foul feasts where they drink so excessively that they end up rooting in the mud like pigs, ready to satisfy your vile lusts. The people began to yell and scold, so that she did not dare to engage in any further debate. One might have expected that they would have mobilized people everywhere to expel us altogether from the land. No, instead of accusing her, they went everywhere, even to the near Greeklands, up to the Alps, declaring that it had pleased the most supreme being to send his wise daughter Minerva, nicknamed Helena, among the people, on a cloud from the sea, to give them good counsel, and that all who would hear her should become rich and happy, and eventually should rule the whole kingdom of the earth. They erected statues of her on their altars, or sold them to the simple people. They announced counsels everywhere that she had never given, and related miracles that she had never performed. They cunningly made themselves masters of our laws and customs, and they managed to explain and distort them all through misinterpretations. Among Finda's folk there are witty men who, by their over-inventiveness, have become so corrupted that they convince themselves and their initiates that they are the best part of Ralda, that their mind is the best part of Ralda's spirit, and that Ralda can only think by their help. The notion that every creature is part of Ralda's infinite being, that they have taken from us. But their false reasoning and ungovernable pride have caused them to stray from the righteous path. If their mind was like Ralda's spirit, then Ralda would be very stupid, instead of being sensible and wise. For their minds always work like slaves, creating beautiful images which they afterwards worship. Rather, Finda's folk are a bad folk, for although their pseudo-wise men convince themselves that they are divine, they have created false divinities for the uninitiated, everywhere proclaiming that these divinities have created the world with all that is therein. Greedy divinities, full of envy and wrath, who want to be honored and served by the people, who want blood and sacrifice and demand rich offerings.